Men, students and scholars, teachers and trainers, professors and professionals, listeners and learners, those who are watching, readings, speaking, listening English. It is really nice time, nice place, nice section. You are listening the language and literature through science and spirituality. The most honorable President Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji, respected ministers and doctors, reverend fathers and mothers, honorable advocates, advertisers, administrators and advisors, affectionate sons and daughters, dear friends, I Dr. Rakesh from USA heartily, cordially praise, admire, appreciate your presence today. How was the literature of English started? Actually, our India was ruled by English people. When East India Company came in India in 1600, different companies from the Europe came in India for spreading their business. After that, they spreaded out their language. But before that, there was the existence of English literature in the English countries. So for that knowledge, you must go through the history of English literature. The Shell and the Book. A child and a man were one day walking on the seashore when the child found a little shell and held it to his car. Dear friends, actually our Indian land is the land of starters, beginners and initiators. Time to time, thinkers, freedom fighters, astronomers, astrologers, scientists, inventors, innovators, artists, singers, personalities came on this earth. But the uniqueness of this nation is by the starters. We can say that Indian land is really a fortunate land which is the confluence of all religions, where is the intermixing of all caste, color, creed and language. So India is the secular country. It respects democracy. It believes in democracy. Democracy is the concept of our mind and heart. Rabindranath Tagore, who wrote in his poetry, "Where the mind is without fear." In his poetry, he explains about the freedom of soul, and all our freedom fighters, starters, beginners, initiators came on this land. Their aim and objective was to make us understand the value of freedom of soul. So dear friends, listen, continue. A child and a man were one day walking on the seashore when the child found a little shell and held it to his ear. Suddenly he heard sounds strange, low, melodious sounds as if the shell were remembering and repeating it to itself the murmurs of its ocean home. What an amazing starting of literature! All the students of English literature, those who are listening, really praiseworthy and admirable. The child's face filled with wonder as he listened. Here in the little shell apparently was a voice from another world. And he listened with delight to its mystery and music. Mystery and music. Music is the power of soul. Musically, we have started the different type of organizations. Likely that God Himself created this universe. In the chapter of the Genesis we study, God created firstly Himself in the form of light and sound. Then came the man explaining that the child heard nothing strange. That the pearly calves of the shell simply caught a multitude of sounds too faint for human ears and filled the glimmering hollows with the murmur of innumerable echoes. Dear friends, what is motivation? It is a great motivation and inspiration that a child brought in his mind through shell. It was not a new word, but only the unnoticed harmony of the old that had aroused the child's wonder. It is rightly said by William Wordsworth in his poem, "A child is the father of man." How is he a father of man? We can understand through these concepts some such experience as this awaits us when we begin the study of literature, which has always two aspects, one of simple enjoyment and appreciation. Simply we have discussed that the starting of literature is music and mystery. So enjoyment and appreciation, these are the two words that we are using in the initial stage of literature. The other of analysis and exact description. Let a little song appeal to the ear, or a noble book to the heart, and for the moment at least we discover a new word, a word so different from our own that it seems a place of dreams and music. To enter and enjoy this new world, to love good books for their own sake is the chief thing. To analyze and explain them is a less joyous but still an important matter. Behind every book is a man. Behind social whose influence is unconsciously reflected. These also we must know. If the book is to speak its whole message in a word, we have now reached a point where we wish to understand as well as to enjoy literature. And the first step, since exact definition is impossible, is to determine some of its essential qualities. What are the qualities of literature? It is simply said that literature is the mirror of our society. Dear friends, if you want to know the word, means if you want to experience the different type of culture, custom, language, rituals of the different nations, you must go through the English literature. This English literature provides us the knowledge. Where is the rich of knowledge? Which is the richest of the knowledge? Ocean of the knowledge. The first significant thing is the essentially artistic quality of whole literature. All art is the expression of life in forms of truth and beauty, or rather it is the reflection of some truth and beauty which are in the world but which remain unnoticed until brought to our attention by some sensitive human soul, just as the delicate curves of the shell reflect sounds and harmonies otherwise noticed. 100 men may pass a haywood, a hayfield, and see only the sooty toil and the windows and the windrows of dried. But here is one who pauses by a Romanian meadow where girls are making hay and singing as they walk. He looks deeper, sees truth and beauty where we see only dead grass, and he reflects what he sees in a little poem in which the hay tells its own story. Dear friends, how the beginning of the literature starts from nature. Means the nature is the beginner, starter of kind of skills, manners, talents, styles, whatsoever we are learning in this modern time. This nature fills us with its multi-dimensional, multi-sided and multifaceted roles. Dear friends, you listen that Walt Whitman, who was an American poet, wrote an anthology of poems in the leaves of grass. In that poem, he speaks about the mystery and music, song of myself. In that poem he sings about his motherland, how he was patriotic and nationalistic for his nation. He explains that democracy word, concept of democracy, which is being used in our all judiciary. This concept has been collected from the Americans through the American Constitution We have quoted for the welfare of humanity all over the world. So our nation is the unique nation in the form of unity in diversity. Yesterday's flowers am I, and I have drunk my last sweet draught of dew. Young maidens came and sang me to my death. The moon looks down and sees me in my shroud, the shroud of my last dew. Yesterday's flowers that are yet in me must needs make way for all tomorrow's flowers. The maidens too that sang me to my death must even so make way for all the maids that are to come. And as my soul, so too their soul will be, laden with fragrance of the days gone by. The maidens that tomorrow come this way will not remember that I once did bloom, for they will only see the new-born flowers. Yet will my perfume's laden soul will bring back as a sweet memory to women's hearts their days of maidenhood, and then they will be sorry that they came to sing me to my death, and all the butterflies will mourn for me. I bear away with me this sunshine, dear remembrance, and the low soft murmurs of the spring. My breath is sweet as child's prattle is. I drank in all the whole earth's fruitfulness to make of it the fragrance of my soul that shall outlie with death. Dear friends, one who reads only that first exquisite line, yesterday's flowers am I, how the past of the glimpse and history is being evident and witnessing our future and present. It is rightly said by first Prime Minister of our nation, Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru says, our present lies in the past. And he was totally inspired by a few lines of American poet Robert Frost, who wrote that the woods are lovely, dark and deep, but I have promises, miles to go before I sleep. Can never again see hay without recalling the beauty that was hidden from his eyes until the poet found it. In the same pleasing, surprising way, all artistic work must be a kind of revelation. This is the last chapter of the Holy Bible. Anyone can know, anyone can read through the Holy Bible that how Jesus reborn and his rebirth showed a great remembrance of the journey dead to life. In the same pleasing, surprising way, all artistic work must be a kind of revelation. Thus, architecture is probably the oldest of the arts. Yet we still have many builders, but few architects. Dear friends, one architect who made the human body, how he is, it is the true research point, the topic of true research for the scientists, doctors and researchers, those who are studying in the different universities all over the world. They must research on the freedom of the soul. After studying on the freedom of soul, then they will reach at the height of the thought that who is the maker of this soul? Why the soul has come on this earth? Dear friends, that is man whose work in wood or stone suggests some hidden truth. And hidden truth and beauty to the human senses. How the God has created the most beautiful statue of the human being. Reason behind to do something better, nicer, finer for the humanity and for our nation. So in literature, which is the art that expresses life in words, that appeal to our own sense of the beautiful, we have many writers but few artists. While studying articles, how the language is beautifying by using, likely that artists are less than writers. Simply writer may write whatsoever is given to him or her, he can write in the presence of nature. But artistically writing, artistically speaking, artistically listening, artistically writing, listening, speaking, reading, these are the things which requires a technique. In the broadest sense, perhaps literature means simply the written records of the race, including all its history and sciences, as well as its poems and novels. In the narrower sense, literature is an artistic record of life. And most of our writing is excluded from it. Dear friends, our land recorders are known as administrators of the particular area. How artistically they measure the quality of land. Likely that literature is like a vast land on which a great humanistic culture's building can be erected. In the narrower sense, literature is the artistic record of life, and most of our writing is excluded from it, just as the mass of our buildings were shelters from storm and from cold are excluded from architecture. A history or a work of science may be and sometimes is literature, but only as we forget the subject matter and the presentation of facts in the simple beauty of its expression. The second quality of literature is its suggestiveness. History just tells us what happened, how happened, why happened, when happened, where happened. But literature gives us solutions, what should be. That's why literature is really more praiseworthy than history. No doubt, literature, history of the literature is really a building, is really a great foundation for the science and literature. Its appeal to our emotions and imagination rather than to our intellect. It is not so much what it says as what it awakens in us, that constitutes its charm when Milton makes Satan say, myself am hell. He does not state any fact, but rather opens up in these three tremendous words, a whole word of speculation and imagination. Dear friends, we have discussed earlier what are the learning methodologies and technologies, today digitologies. Out of all this, imagination and speculation of word. When Festus in the presence of Helen asked, was this the face that launched 1,000 ships? He does not state a fact or expect an answer. He opens a door through which our imagination enters a new world. A world of music, love, beauty, heroism, the whole splendid world of Greek literature. Such magic is in words. When Shakespeare describes the young Byron as speaking in such apt and gracious words that aged ears play truant at his tales, he has unconsciously given not only an excellent description of himself, but the measure of all literature, which makes us play truant with the present world and run away to live a while in the pleasant realm of fancy. The province of all art is not to instruct but to delight. And only as literature delights us, causing each reader to build in his own soul that lordly pleasure house of which Tennyson dreamed in his palace of art, is it worthy of its name? Dear friends, the glimpse of history really creates solution. It gives us wisdom, makes us wise. The third characteristic of literature, arising directly from the other two, is its permanence. The word does not live by bread alone. Notwithstanding its hurry and bustle and apparent absorption in material things, it does not willingly let any beautiful thing perish. This is even more true of its songs than of its painting and sculpture. Though permanence is a quality we should hardly expect in the present deluge of books and magazines pouring day and night from our presses in the name of literature. But this problem of too many books is not modern as we suppose. It has been a problem ever since Caxton brought the first printing press from Flanders 400 years ago, and in the shadow of Westminster Abbey opened his little shop and advertised his wares as good and cheap. Even earlier, 1,000 years, the busy scholars of the great library of Alexandria found that the number of parchments was much too great for them to handle, and now when we print more in a week than all the Alexandrian scholars could copy in a century, it would seem impossible that any production could be permanent, that any song or story could live to give delight in future ages. But literature is like a river in the flood, which gradually purifies itself in two ways. The mud settles to the bottom and the scum rises to. When we examine the writings that by common consent constitute our literature, the clear stream purified of its dross, we find at least two more qualities which we will call the test of literature and which determine its permanence. Dear friends, next you will ask this thing that what is test of literature? As simply doctor himself tests his body through his mind. When we take deep sleep, then our mind starts testing the whole body, bottom to top, root to fruit. So likely that our human body has many stations. Similarly in literature, there are so many stoppage and stations, but how literature is tested, it is really a great technique, not less than a skill. The first of these is universality, that is the appeal of the greatest human interest and the simplest human emotions. Though we speak of national and race literature like the Greek or Teutonic, and though each had certain superficial marks arising out of peculiarities of its own people, it is nevertheless true that good literature knows no nationality. It is rightly said in the Holy Bible that love is God, God is love. Humanity is our caste, humanity is our religion. Nor any bounds have those of humanity. It is occupied chiefly with elementary passions and emotions, love and hate, joy and sorrow, fear and faith, which are an essential part of our human nature. And the more it reflects these emotions, the more surely does it awaken a response in men of every race. Every father must respond to the parable of the prodigal son. Wherever men are heroic, they all acknowledge the mastery of Homer. Wherever a man thinks on the strange phenomena of evil in the world, he will find his own thoughts in the book of Job. In whatever place men love their children, their hearts must be stirred by tragic sorrow. Oedipus and King Lear, all these are but shining examples of the law that only as perishable stone and ideals of truth in imperishable prose and poetry. It was simply the ideals of the Greeks and the Hebrews and Romans preserved in their literature, which made them what they were and which determined their value to future generations. Our democracy, the boast of all English-speaking nation, is a dream, not the doubtful and sometimes disheartening spectacle presented in our legislative halls, but the lovely and immortal ideal of a free and equal manhood, preserved as a most precious heritage in every great literature from the Greeks to the Anglo-Saxons. Dear friends, all our arts, our sciences, even our inventions are founded squarely upon ideals. This idea, the theory of idea, which was instructed, directed by our social reformist Swami Vivekananda. One idea, one thought, one man army can bring revolutionary change. And as for the thought of our present Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji, one idea can bring visionary change in our youngsters. So for that, ideals on which the whole creation was created, for under every invention is still the dream of Beowulf, that man may overcome the forces of nature. And the foundation of all our sciences and discoveries is the immortal dream that man shall be as gods, knowing good and evil. In a word, our whole civilization, our freedom, our progress, our homes, our religion rest solidly upon ideals for their foundation. Our students of criticism, those who are doing masters in English literature, they will read there are two basic theories of criticism. One which was propounded by Plato in the form of ideas, who says that the whole creation was created by one idea. Firstly, through the imagination, the idea came in the mind of the Lord and God. Then the creation came in the form of existence. Later on the contrary, there was the disciple of Plato whose name was Aristotle. He wrote that this is the use of immutation. Through the immutation theory, God has created the creation. Both are right on at their places. It is only when we remember this that we appreciate the action of the devout Musulman, who picks up and carefully preserves every scrap of paper on which words are written, because this scrap may perchance contain the name of Allah, and the ideal is too enormously important to be neglected or lost. Dear friends, in summing up of this technology you will listen, we are now ready, if not to define, at least to understand a little more clearly the object of our present study. Literature is the expression of life in words of truth and beauty. Simply, we know that Mahatma Gandhi, who was the staunch believer of the truth and non-violence. And if we talk about the beauty, there is John Keats, who has written, "Beauty lies in the eyes of beholder." It is written record of man's spirit, of his thoughts, emotions, aspirations. It is the history and the only history of the human soul. It is characterized by its artistic, its suggestive, its permanent qualities. Its two tests are its universal interest and its personal style. Its object, aside from the delight it gives us, is to know man, that is the soul of man, rather than his actions. And since it preserves to the race the ideals upon which all our civilization is founded, it is one of the most important and delightful subjects that can occupy the human mind. Dear friends, what is bibliography? Simply our researchers of English literature, not only English literature but all the researchers in the different fields, they read different type of biographies of the starters, beginners, initiators in the field of science, religion, arts, commerce and engineering. Dear friends, after knowing the beginning of literature, our research reaches at the height of true invention, innovation, and research of the flight of and freedom of soul. God does exist. We feel in the form of air, fire, soil, sky and water. No doubt, the starter of Sikhism, Shri Guru Nanak Dev Ji Maharaj, when he born in 1469 in 14th to 15th century, he messaged the worldly people, there is the existence of Lord in these five elements. Later on he described that God does exist even where there is no validity of these five elements. Swami Vivekananda, on the basis, on the principles of doctrines of the Vedas, the Ramayana, the Mahabharata, he addressed the USA especially by saying that, my brothers and sisters of the America, how there was the equality in his mind, oneness in his mind, unity in his mind for the worldly people. Dear friends, it was really a great message and symbol of our characteristic nation, our nation, which is known by character, not by colors and climate. No doubt we have unity on the basis of climate. We have unity on the basis of colors. But this was the great message which was given by this unique personality to the worldly people. Today, for the regeneration, recreation, reoperation in our youngsters, learners, scholars, it is really a great message. They must keep in their mind that we have so many objects and celestial bodies around this human soul, and our soul should praise, admire and appreciate the all celestial bodies of the nature. Nature is always praiseworthy and appreciable. This outwardness of nature takes us towards the reading of the internal nature. How is the nature of mind? How is the nature of heart? How is the nature of lungs? How is the nature of kidneys? How is the nature of skin? How is the nature of hair? All the inventions, innovations in this modern technology, we are researching on the basis of the nature of the God's created nature. Birds, plants, trees, animals that we have around us, around this human soul, that is also the field of research. So we respect all the creations of the Lord. We welcome all the respect, all the created gifts of God that are being provided us free of cost to the worldly people. So dear friends, we must respect the godly grace. We must respect the godly blessings. We should never forget that Swami Vivekananda. We should never forget the starter of Buddhism, Gautam Buddha. Mahavir Swami, who was the starter of Jainism. Ramkishan Mission, which was started by Swami Vivekananda. All these starters, beginners, initiators came on this land and they invented, innovated for the reformation of our youngsters, old-aged people, children and even patients. So there is no question of frustration, depression, poverty if we have the true knowledge of science and spirituality with us. Dear friends, it will make us clear the language, literature and grammar of the all subjects that we study in school, colleges, universities. Dear friends, personally, professionally, publicly, socially, economically, in all the streams, we can progress if we have the complete knowledge of English literature through words. Through the clarification of the words and terminologies of the literature, we can understand the complete information, instruction, direction. So it makes our mind knowledgeable, informative, instructive and directive. Dear friends, daily we are to spend our time with nature, and in praise of nature we must devote and dedicate ourselves for the welfare of society and nation. For the betterment and upliftment of our nation and society, we must provide our time, place and our actions. But starting we can from our ideas. If we change our ideas, if we start from our ideas, then the development of ideas will become a great fortune of our nation. Our children, those who are studying in the different universities, schools, colleges, they are the nation builder. They are to be patriotic and nationalistic. They must remember that their body is made by 5 elements, and that 5 elements they have captured and collected from the Indian nation. All the worldly people, those who are in their nation, basically they have attachment with the Indian motherland. So this Indian motherland is really praiseworthy for all the worldly people. They know that our India is known by spiritual values. To maintain the spiritual standard of this nation, we must get up early in the morning with nature, and we must think for the welfare of our family and nature that we have around us. I once again thank God who has given us this wonderful time to speak, read, write and listen the words of literature and language for the beautification of the language, for the beautification of this Indian motherland. Thanks, dear friends, dear sisters and brothers.